want to welcome you to the webinar. We know that sometimes pilots get a little too much glory. We want to make sure that we address the maintenance guys, the wrench turners, the people who keep the aircraft flying. You guys are appreciated. We know that some of you may be thinking about getting out of the military. We know there's a lot of opportunities. There's been talk about shortages of pilots and maintenance technicians throughout aviation for quite some time. And so we understand that there are certainly possibilities for you. There's nothing wrong with making a career out of the military, but if you want to get out, we'd just kind of like to give you some advice on how to make that transition a little bit easier. We've got a couple people, 3 people here today to help us talk about that. Let me introduce them. First, we have James Simmons, who is Senior Manager of Aviation Quality with Eula Vista Integrated Solutions. James was in the Army for 7 years. He was a Black Hawk maintenance technician and crew chief. And so he's gone through the transition and he's here to give you his advice on how to make that easier. From Southern Utah University, we also have Jared Britt, who's the Director of Global Aviation and Maintenance Training for SUU. And to talk about financial aid, we have Jocelyn Romanik. I don't know if we will have a special visitation by her daughter, but we'll see. And she's the financial aid coordinator for SUU. Got a couple things. These webinars are interactive. We do encourage you to ask questions. The best way to do it is use the question module here in Zoom. There is a chat feature. You're welcome to use it. We try to focus on the question module. We know there's a lot of other conversations that can sometimes go on. So please use the question module to ask anything you want to ask, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the webinar. James will have a PowerPoint presentation. He will have QR codes. So either if you're watching this live or if you're watching the recording, have your cell phone camera ready to go, your smart cam, so you can capture some of these documents that he's going to share with you. These webinars are being recorded. We do ask that you give us about a day to get these posted, maybe sometimes Monday at the latest. Feel free to share them. If you know of somebody else who's thinking about transitioning over to the civilian sector, feel free to let them watch this too. Share the link. You can always find these and all of our webinars on rotor.org. So with that, I would like to introduce James Simmons, whose camera is up. James, if you can unmute, appreciate your joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. I know HAI does a great job at dealing with their Mil2Civ and handling the workshops that we continuously do every year. So I appreciate it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I just realized we have some construction going on in the room right next door to me, of course. I hope that's not going to be a disruption. I'm going to mute my camera and we'll go ready to go through your slide deck there, James.
Okay. So again, my name is James Simmons. This is a workshop that I put on, or a presentation that I put on for the HAI workshop, Mil2Civ at Hella Expo annually. And it deals with the transition aspect for the aviation careerist, and basically bringing out the fundamental points, either that I've personally experienced or gained from others or talking with others continuously to assist. You know, what are the highlight point topics that everybody deals with? So from a personal level, I got out the Army, started with PSA Airlines, US Airways. And shortly after that, they filed bankruptcy, went through a lot of economic heartache. And so basically had to redo my transition again. So, you know, to sit here and think that there's ways to help other people and how to assist and where we've done this. So next slide, Dan. So the concept behind this, right, is obviously to not panic, is to be prepared and to stay away from that panic button by all means. You know, having the tools available, and as technicians, as mechanics, you know, we know that having the right tool for the right job leads to successful completion of any task that we approach and what we do. And so this is just another thing to shove away in your rucksack and put away in your toolbox and hold on for whether or not you're transitioning immediately or you're planning to transition down the road. Next slide. So I've broken this down into 8 key elements to assist in the transition process. So the first one being to strategize, the second to prepare, the third to define, the fourth to optimize, the fifth to equip, the sixth to network, the seventh is contact, and the eighth is mobilize. So try to keep it at a basic elemental level so that you understand, and we'll break down each one of these as we move along. So next slide there. So we'll start off with the first one, which is the strategize, right? So everybody who goes through transition, whether it be retirement, whether it be your ETSing, whether you're just completing your commitment and you're ready to get out, or whichever life may bring you to, it's people can generally tell you by the date, by the hour, exactly when they're ready to get out of the military, what they're ready to do. What they can't tell you is what's the start date of your new career, right? So they like to focus on the last days of their service. They like to focus on what they have to do to get done. I'm ready to clear, I'm ready to get out. And what they start neglecting is to focus on what the first day of the new career looks like. So if you can identify that date the best you can, in other words, you're establishing a goal for this is the date that I want my new career to begin. This is the fundamental of the transition that takes place, right? And then you integrate all of these into your strategy, the 8 key elements for getting to that start date point that you want to achieve. So to do that, right, you can utilize technology, you can utilize a day planner, you can, it's okay to just use an old calendar, a piece of paper, whatever you want to put together and put it together as a book, right? And why do we do this? We do this to remain focused on our goals. And we need to identify those goals. And that way we dedicate the time, the effort, and energy to complete this strategy. So we're visualizing our path to success for what a successful transition looks like at the end. Next one, please. Yeah. So to begin this, right, we have to enter in the prepare stage. So we have to prepare for our transition. So 4 key elements to the prepare stage, right? We want to mentally prepare, which is the more you have your goals aligned, the more you have focused, right, the better off you'll be. So there'll always be a little fear, a little anxiety, maybe a little panic, a little instability. These are perfectly normal for transition. You are changing an abrupt element in your life into a new section. You're pursuing something that you haven't gone down before. And for some people, maybe they joined the military directly out of high school. Maybe it was their first career they've ever worked. So they don't know exactly what the layout and how the civilian world works. But if you're mentally prepared and that way you remain focused on what you want to do, it makes the obstacles that you run into a lot more smaller. So the second one is financially. Obviously, utilizing savings, financial coaching, and preparedness are the best approaches. But understanding that some people, their transition is going to be a little bit different, right? They may not be retiring. They may not have a pension of a guaranteed income that's going to come in. They may not have a disability check that's going to come in. It may be you've done your time and your commitment, and now you're having to get out there on your own, and you're going to you're going to have the stress of supporting your family or supporting yourself, in addition to taking on a new career. So that may include financial for travel, financial for job seeking, financial for tools, and everything else that may come up in between. So you want to really pay attention to your financial strategy and what you want to do and what that looks like. The third one, physically, maintain your fitness as long as you can. You are overall in the military, and I know a lot of the veterans that know this, you're in the best shape that you've probably been in, and it maintain that because it keeps to your healthiness. It's your health ticket, and also maintains your mental health. So different aspects for different job preparedness, different physical requirements, obviously that all comes into play. And then the fourth one is documents. There's different logs that you could keep, your professional portfolio, or as we say, right, the I Love Me book. If you failed to really keep up with that while you were in the military, or you didn't track all of your documentations, now is a good time to actually focus that time and put it into that to have it, right? All of your training, all your certifications, all of your stuff. And also all identifications that you need. So, do I need a passport? CDL for some maintenance positions. Is there different things that I can look at as far as applying to put additional feathers in my hat so I'm more prepared. Next slide then. So the next one is what I call define, right? And this is a real struggle and heartache that comes with a lot of the different aspects from the transitioning community, right? Define your identity. So in other words, you walk into an interview and somebody asks you, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, or how do you see yourself or whatnot? And the biggest takeaway from this is to know that what you do is not who you are. Your job title is not who you are. Your job title is your vehicle that transports you for income. And so the military defines a lot of what we do, what we accomplish, our positions, and everything that we have is based on the titles that you're given while in the military. And so out of this, what I've recognized is one of the things, Clifton Strength Finders identifies your different strengths. So the QR code on there will take you actually to their site, can do an assessment and can define for you up to 32 different strengths. There's no weaknesses. It's just what is your top strength? What is your lowest strength? And so if some people can go, their entire lives and never really know what their strengths or weaknesses are. This is a great tool to help you out with that. And so to assist you in the goals of where you want to be at the end is to understand what my strengths are and how do I apply them to what I want to pursue in the future. So this is a great little tool, again, to stick away and have it available. So next slide, Dan. So the next is to optimize, right? And by optimize, we mean your exposure, what your availability is, how you are perceived, how you're seen, right? So examine and improve your social media profiles, right? If you're applying for jobs, what does that LinkedIn account look like? What does your profile pictures look like? Do you have a professional picture on there? Do you have a military picture on there? You want to start applying the aspects of being in the civilian workforce, what it looks like to be in the civilian workforce and how you present yourself. And a fundamental of that, utilize a job placement website that supports the aviation industry. Obviously, you want to be surrounded by the professionals in the industry that you work with. And to do that, so, the examples of that would be like GS Firm, or all the different, Indeed is a good one, Glassdoor, aviationrecruiting.net. Those are some other examples of where you focus around, the sites that actually pay attention and work hand in hand with the aviation industry itself. Another thing to examine from the outside perspective, right? What is your contact information look like? In other words, your email address, right? You don't want to use a .mil address. You don't want to use a .gov address. And make sure that whether you have Gmail or whether you have Yahoo or even Hotmail, that you have a professional email account title, right? So, you don't want GI Princess at hotmail.com. You don't want anything that takes away from your professional appearance as a whole, in what you're pursuing. So if you're going to put your personal information out there for everybody to look at, you want to make it presentable for possible future employers to look at. So next slide, Dan. So now we get more into the depth of the transition, especially for the mechanics, especially for the maintenance aspect, is the equipped. So, right, research and complete your certifications. A lot of the MOSs, a lot of the job functions that exist in the military, where you can get your AMP, or you can get your NDI certifications, or you can get, different equivalencies based on the job that you were performing while in the military. Now is the time that you want to begin to pursue and get those certifications. You want those lined up and done. Once you're out and trying to find employment, you're just going to increase your stress level if you're not prepared with all of those to begin with. And understand the difference between reimbursement and payment. So, some employers may offer reimbursement for certain certifications, and some employers may offer to paying for the certification. So understand the requirements of the positions that may be posted, and understand the difference between preferred and required when it comes to job descriptions, right? So if a job description is requesting that they prefer an A&P versus an A&P being required, there's a huge difference that comes obviously with that. Questions to ask on the interview trail, right? Do I have to provide my own tools? Are the tools that I need to provide, is it more effective for me to have metric tools or standard tools? Which type of aircraft are you working on, as far as whether or not they're, European standard or they're US standard? And do I have to cover my own relocation? And of course, dealing with understanding the military contracting, pay attention to the specifics of military contracts as far as military training, certifications, or courses that are required for those. With dealing with the DoD, there's a lot of different aspects. Everybody is familiar from being active duty, understanding some of the differences and requirements that come with being a civilian contractor. There may be a little bit of things to get hung up on. So, and the overall biggest one at the end, anticipate expenses, as we said, back to the financial for the job search and placement. This means you may have to travel to job fairs. It means you may have to buy some various suits, or just be able to travel to where you want an interview, to attend an interview, or some kind of placement event. Next one, Dan. So one of the biggest aspects and key elements to deal with is the networking, right? So vast majority of jobs that exist in the world, it's referrals that get entered into the workforce through pre-existing employees or with professionals that people are connected with, or just simply networking, right? But then how do you create your own network? How do you build yourself up, right? So create the time to get out and connect with the industry. So you got the various professional organizations. Like I said, when Hella Expo, where I normally give this class, I like to say that, the next 72 hours, will be for the rest of your life is what's going to set you up. So to get out there and reach out, and don't be intimidated to reach out to people. Don't be scared to reach out to people. You connect with professionals at every chance you get, establish yourself through, like I said, whatever various organizations, whether it be HAI, whether it be Professional Aviation Maintenance Association. There's all kinds of different places to meet different people. The aviation industry is actually a lot smaller than what people anticipate or what they think. And so understanding how simple it actually is to meet and know a lot of people. And the most important element on the end is to follow up with all connections. So whenever you are at job fairs, whenever you're introduced to new people, whenever you're doing stuff, ensure that interpersonal communication takes place. The follow-up is usually where everybody kind of drops off. You may meet somebody, you may receive a business card, may even have a little chat with them, and then that's it. You'll never hear from them again, or you'll never follow up with them, and you could have lost a great opportunity, or even possibly an opportunity for somebody else that you may know just through that networking chance. So next one, Dan. And so contact, right? So while on the trail and out there trying to find job placement and working, right, reach out to the organizations and understand now the difference between, dealing with the human resources element and dealing with recruiters and dealing with the hiring managers, and I kind of identify and understand what those three different points are. But again, that's all part of establishing and building your networking, right? Is to understand that, well, if I meet someone and I know they're a recruiter, well, okay, well, that recruiter has access to the HR has access to the hiring managers. And so building that network connection so that you can understand how each organization is a little bit different, how they are structured, and how they do their hiring processes. And that's all part of it, right? One of the simple things for that I do, is add your own contact information as a favorite on your phone, so it's a quick reference to give to somebody else, right? So if it's like, if you are on your own favorites, then you could share it immediately as soon as you're sitting there talking to someone. right? It's faster than a business card. It's faster than now they have your name, now they have your email, now they have your phone number. It's all digitally in their phone. That is one of the best little handy things that you could do. If you're out on the hunt, keep your resume handy on your phone. Be able to transmit your resume, whether it be AirDrop, whether it be, to send it to them. But you never know when you're looking who you're going to run into, who you're going to talk to, and what opportunities may come your way. So, I have a friend that, 23 years retired out of the Army and didn't realize how many contacts he didn't have until he was separated. And so that's some of the things to think about, is even if you look back and reflect, if you have time, who do I know? Where do I know people at? Where did such and such end up at? And that's some of the things to work through. Those are all contacts that will help you through the job search. Next one, Dan. So then the next one is mobilize, right? So this is my welcome point to the aviation industry, right? The career you want may require relocation. Unfortunately, there aren't helicopters, there aren't aircraft, there aren't airports around every corner and everywhere that you go that is going to be convenient for where you want to live. And so there are times where you may have to go where the work is. And there may be times across the US, there may be times across the ocean, there may be times not even working for an American organization. So understanding the difference and where you relocate and researching that cost of living comparison before the decision time is really important, right? And understand that as civilian, you got to kind of let go that the COLA, the BAH, all those perks of living that you get through the military, they're not going to be there. What your salary negotiation is and the cost of living effect on that is it. So you have to measure all those aspects of relocation. Understand the different schedules that exist, right? A lot of the different airlines, they may run a 410. There's places that may run, 12 hours a day, 7 on, 7 off, or 14 on, 14 off, and understanding the distance for certain job requirements. So if you look at like the EMS base requirement, normally wants a technician or somebody to live within an hour of the base. So that has a huge impact. So understand the key concepts that evolve with the mobilization and location. There's a lot of stuff to look at and analyze, and it's not to intimidate anybody. It's just part of the preparedness that goes along with it. Next slide, Dan. So now we get more to the details of the airframe and power plant certificate. So in the military, the Joint Service Aviation Maintenance Certification Council, or the JSAMCC, that is the opportunity where the military actually pays you to get your A&P while you're active duty. Now, the biggest part of understanding this benefit, this is not a transition program. So if you are generally under 12 months from getting out of the military, they are not going to reimburse you for that. They're not going to pay you for that because they just one of the rules that they set up. If you are beyond 12 months, absolutely get it while you can and take complete advantage of it. It's one of the best opportunities that exist. If you are fully qualified in your MOS to get an A&P based on what you've done, then that is obviously the quickest route. If you're outside of that 12-month window or you're already out, the second part is to verify. So the FAA has AC 8900.1, Chapter 5, lists out exactly what MOSs come with which applicable certificate. So whether it be an airframe and a power plant, or an airframe or a power plant, or whatever, however that works. But understand this, and this is one of the big things. The MOS is not a guarantee, right? So it does not guarantee your A&P. Your endorsements and documentation that go with that, it is still up to the FAA, the ASI, ASE interpretation as to whether or not they feel your competency is high enough to still do it. So it's not a dissuasion. It just means have your knowledge before you go talk to the FAA. So do some studying, do your homework, and sure, you know, because they do have the opportunity, it is laid out to ask you questions as to determine whether or not they feel that your MOS has given you the proper strengths and the proper knowledge to be able to test for your airframe and power plant. Understand that once you get, so if you go to number 3, obtain FAA form 8610-2, right, what's commonly known as your tickets. Once you obtain your tickets and you take your first test, you now have 24 months to complete the entire action. If you do not complete within 24 months after your first test, you have to start the entire process over. So it's kind of a dedicated, once you're on that road, you have to have your agenda laid out of exactly what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. You know, if you have your tickets and you haven't taken your first test, there is no limitation yet still. And then understand that the DME and oral and practical, those are the final 2 aspects, have to be preferred to be within the jurisdiction of the Flight Standard District Office that you received your 8610 from. So if you got your tickets out of Nashville and now you're living in Kansas, you're under a different FSDO, you actually are supposed to get permission for your tickets to be valid to test in Kansas. So understand that there's a little bit of rules that are involved with all this stuff. Generally, if you get your tickets in the same FSDO and you test in the same FSDO area, you're covered. Next one. Now, AMPs and the number 1 holdups. So this is normally the people, what I've surveyed and who I've talked to and what I've assessed on my own is that everybody that's qualified, in other words, their MOS qualified to go get their AMP, what is keeping them from doing it? So the first one is intimidation. Second one is priorities. Third one is procrastination. And the fourth is justifying the need. Hundreds of thousands have done it before you. And it's just a matter of create your goal, do it, and complete the mission, right? Get it done and get it over with. You know, it's one of those things that you just push yourself to accomplish it. And when you've accomplished it, that's it, you're done. And it is an awesome feeling. And the reward that it brings you, obviously the employment opportunities, but it gives you the skill and the knowledge. It gives you the fundamentals that you understand and what you're working with, but it gives you basically the inner strength that you need. So make the time, make the effort to get your certification, you know, and fight all the mental excuses that you'll have, right? This is everybody looks at it as you know, either the biggest one, justify a need is one of those ones where it's you know, well, to be a duty contractor to work on military aircraft, I don't need it, so why should I go get it? There's never a guarantee in the aviation community for anything. And actually the military now is more going with civil derivative aircraft. So they do require a lot more AMPs on the newer aircraft that are coming out. So it's beneficial to just go ahead and get it done. Next one, Dan. And then we come down to the documentation, right? So this is for the AMP. This is the stuff that you will need. You will need your DD-214 showing your MOS. You will need your MOS school certificate from the tech school, whichever one that you graduated from that says you have that MOS. They may or may not, and this is all discretion of the FSDO, ask for a memorandum of experience. So that has to come from an executive officer or the commander basically saying that, yes, you performed the duties of that MOS while you were in the military. The FAA is savvy on a lot of different military operations. They know you could have held an MOS and completely never done that job. So they do have the discretion to be able to ask for a memorandum of experience. And obviously, number 4, any documentation of experience that you could back it up. So understanding that, you know, the letter, the memo, it doesn't have to be crazy. You're not trying to sell it to anybody. It's just stating that, yep, you performed the duties. This is the time, or this is the place, and this is exactly what you did. An OJT book, training log, any kind of AMT log book, which brings me to our next one. So next one, Dan. So you can have experience documentation. The FAA allows and accepts right, an AMT logbook as a form for maintenance documentation. So it's basically you're endorsed by a third party that yes, you have performed this work, or yes, I have, practical experience at doing this. And this is one of the tools. So this an AMT logbook, aviation maintenance technician logbook, allows you to track the actual aircraft and experience of what you've done, because there is a compulsory, if you're qualified for an A through your MOS, but you're not qualified for a P, right? So if you have 18 months of documented engine experience, that could qualify you for your P as well. And so in order to do that is either you have to display the documented maintenance experience that you have, or in a logbook form fashion, or evidence and endorsed by another technician that yes, I've seen him, he did work or she worked on all these different stuff. But it has to be acceptable to the FAA. It's not a guarantee. It's one of those things. So a maintenance technician, right, keep a logbook on an aircraft. A pilot keeps a logbook for his flight time. Maintenance technician should be no different, right? Keeping a maintenance technician log for yourself, all the aircraft that you've worked on, all the experience that you have, and actually do it. So this is a QR code that direct link to Amazon for purchase of one of the different books. So next slide, Dan. And so here's one of the greatest parts, right? The FAA and the AMP actually has all the study tools for free. So this QR code actually leads to the FAA website where you can get the general book, the Airframe Volume 1, Airframe Volume 2, and Power Plant handbooks. So the ASA to Fly, all of the different organizations, Jepson, all of them that sit out there and charge a lot of money for these books. Same books, PDF format. The ones that are actually written by the FAA for the AMP test are absolutely free on their website to download and use and study however you please. So this is a QAR code that takes that directly to the FAA, has a download. There's even more additional handbooks and manuals that are available through the FAA. A lot of people don't think the FAA is there to help, but they actually are. They enjoy the industry as much as anybody else. So that's what this QR code goes to. And final slide. And here's my contact info if anybody wants to get a hold of me. I don't have a problem answering anybody's questions or helping anybody out. I know I've been through the transition period myself. I know a lot of people that have been through transition and had tough times. It is a small community in the aviation industry, and we help each other out, as best we can. And I think that's, I know we'll get to the Q&A a little later, or however you want to do that, Dan, but that wraps up my aspect. I hope it wasn't too fast.
Well, that's one of the good things about recording these, James, is people can stop the recording and go back and watch again as they need to. One of the things you were just talking about was networking, making yourself available, which is really grateful for something like that. As you mentioned, our industry is small, and so much of it is relationship based. It's a lot like the military in that respect. And so I will emphasize what you've been saying about networking. I think that makes a huge effort when you're getting ready to job search. Hey, do you know something that's open? This is what I'm looking for. Have you heard anything? There's a lot of that conversation that goes around. So yeah, maintain your contacts. Okay, James, thanks so much. We'll have you join us up in just a second. I do want to put a plug in real quick. You also had mentioned some of the different places to look for things, career fairs. HAI Heli Expo is coming up in March. We do have a career fair at HAI Heli Expo. That will be on March 8th. The show is in Dallas, Texas this year. The career fair is outside the show floor, so there's no cost to attend the career fair. Bring your resumes, bring your anything you want to pass along to prospective employers. And that runs from 10:30 to 5. There will be a directory inside the convention center at the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center in Dallas. If you're in the area, by all means, come by, talk to people. If you have time, want to get out on the show floor, there is a cost involved, but it's a show that everybody in the helicopter industry should see at least once. Yes. Okay, go ahead, James. Okay.
I was concur. If you've never been to Hella Expo, I would definitely challenge you to go. It is definitely worth the investment.
It is the one show in the rotorcraft industry that absolutely everybody attends. You'll see everything from small level components to clothing, things like that, to $30 million plus helicopters, some of the new state of the art technology. It will really get you excited about this industry. Okay, Jared and Jocelyn, can I ask you to bring your cameras up? There we go. Stop sharing there. Want to express my appreciation for both of you joining us. Southern Utah University has been a longtime partner with HAI, and so we're grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for having us.
You betcha. The presentation James just gave was great for people who are transitioning out of the military. Obviously, in some cases, people will look for an external education program, and so maybe once they get out, even in some cases while they're still in, what do you think a veteran should look for in an A&P program, Jared?
Yeah, so there's actually two different avenues here that we should discuss. The first one being Part 147. The Part 147 program is typically an education program that goes through 18 months to 24 months. And that is if you do not get your MOS all figured out with the FAA. That would be that your experience in the military did not translate, or you weren't able to get it approved by the FAA to go ahead and take your tests. You would need to attend a Part 147 school at that point. On the other side, if you have received your sign off from the FAA to test, there are several schools throughout the country, and SUU is actually developing one now, which is called a Part 65 school. And a Part 65 school takes your sign off from the FAA, and it gives you anywhere from a 10 to 12 day crash course, so that you come in, you're qualified to take your test. We teach you how to take the test. You take the test and you walk out with your license. A lot of veterans do that because the test covers so many things that you don't typically find in military activity. For instance, a good portion of the test is piston engines, which a lot of veterans are not going to have any experience in. However, they still have to be able to be tested on that to get their power plant license. So those Part 65 crash courses are very good for doing that. But again, the Part 147, a lot of veterans that even qualify to go ahead and take their test will choose to go to a Part 147 school, especially an accredited school like ours, so that they can get that degree and then also use that as a platform to get other degrees moving forward.
Okay, is there an advantage to an A&P program that is part of a flight school? I know Southern Utah University has an outstanding flight school as well.
Yes, there is, absolutely. So we have people that do both. They'll come in and they'll get their A&P and they'll decide, hey, I want to work on my pilot's license as well. So once they're finished with one, they'll start the other, and vice versa. They'll finish with their pilot training and realize that, hey, while they're building hours, the A&P would be something that they would like to have so they can continue that. And then also, because we share resources for maintenance training school, there's a lot more, like every single one of our aircraft is certified through our Part 147 certificate. So our students get exposures to our Bell helicopters and things like that, our BO-105 and those types of things. So it's definitely a bonus.
Okay, I'm not sure if this one's best for Jocelyn or you, Jared. Man, you guys do look cold. It looks like I'm guessing Southern Utah is ready for winter now. So what's the best first step for a veteran beginning an education in an A&P school? Should they start with the registration office, financial aid? Is there somewhere else they should start?
I can take that one, Jared. So when you are looking to go to a school, you'll need to apply to the university itself or the school if they have a separate application for the maintenance program, like we have a separate one at SUU that you need to apply through. Get your application squared away, and usually once that happens, you'll be directed to next steps, whether it's registering for classes, how to pay for everything. If you have military education benefits like the GI Bill, talking with the Veterans Resource Center and getting all of that squared away so you know how everything is paid for. And usually they have, once they know that you're interested, they have a system and they'll walk you through it because they want to help you achieve the goal that you have.
How far in advance should somebody be looking to apply to a school before, say, courses start? Do they need a month, 6 weeks?
It probably depends on the school. SUU's program is relatively new, so we're taking students with our recruitment process. Other places might have a pretty rigid, like you have a deadline that you need to meet, and if you haven't gotten your application in by that time, you'll just have to wait to the next cycle.
Okay. Jocelyn, obviously the majority or a lot of the veterans coming out to the military will have access to the GI Bill, but sometimes that doesn't cover all the expenses, especially if they have a family or something like that. Are there other financial aid options that can be stacked onto the GI Bill, or other options that are available to veterans?
Yeah, there are. So a lot of times I'll direct veterans to fill out the FAFSA application, which is the free application for federal student aid. And they use your tax information from 2 years ago to estimate what you will need for school. Sometimes there's a difference between what you're making 2 years ago and what you're making now, especially if you just got out of the military. So there are ways to use more up-to-date information. But with the FAFSA, they can offer you federal loans. Usually the interest rate on those is what is attractive. And then Pell Grant money is just free educational money that you can put towards your education. If you do have, full coverage from your GI Bill benefits, filling out the FAFSA application is still beneficial, because if you are eligible for Pell Grant money, that's just extra money that you get to take home. Use it for books if you need to, tools, which those can be, decently expensive, or whatever else you might need to be funding.
I remember Pell Grants well. Free money is always a really nice project or a thing to receive, especially when you're working on an education. Jared, Jane talked about certain veterans with certain training being able to test directly into an A&P license. For those veterans who aren't eligible, or maybe they take longer, can they receive credit for an A&P program for the experience they do already have?
Yeah, so if they have a license already, if they have an airframe license or a power plant license and they want to come into our program, we can give them credit for that airframe or that power plant. Unfortunately, right now, the FAA does not allow for us to, as a school, to give specific credit for specific classes from the military. Now, that is changing, however. SUU, in partnership with Aviation Technical Education Council and Aviation Mechanics Fraternal Association and HAI, are working on a collective ask from Congress right now to bring that out of the FAA into the schools and give each school the opportunity to assess that veteran's experience and give them credit for specific courses that they would have experience on. So it actually allows us a lot more flexibility in that. And that is something that we are currently working on right now, and we're hoping to see that happen in Congress in the next year or two.
Oh, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Obviously, the A is for airframe, the P is for power plant. What other areas are typically covered in A&P schools?
Yeah, so the A and the P together are, encompasses every part of the aircraft. Our program specializes in rotor. We do a lot more specific on rotorcraft training, but there's things like avionics, and there's guys that can come out of the military that may have an avionics background, but no airframe and no power plant. It does help them with their training. But one thing that is happening in the industry, and SUU is also part of this as well, is we are developing an avionics emphasis within our Part 147 degree. So for instance, a student will come in, a veteran will come in, and they will go through their first 3 semesters and have their airframe license done. But instead of going their last 2 semesters to get their power plant, they'll go their last 2 semesters to get their avionics certificate. And that's because that's coming from the industry to us, and that's what they're wanting to see. We also have a certificate for the airframe. So if you're a veteran and you already have the power plant, or you just want the airframe, you can come in, do your 3 semesters, get your airframe, and you'll get a certificate of completion from the university for that airframe. And then you can use your own avionics experience if you want to actually have a leg up in the industry.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. Perhaps somebody's already coming out of the military with an A&P license and they still want to use their GI Bill, or perhaps they've done a career in the military and they want to get into management or something like that. What kinds of programs are available to somebody who is looking for something beyond an A&P program?
Yeah, so there are lots of programs throughout the country in aviation management, bachelor's degrees. SUU just launched an aviation leadership degree, and the A&P program actually flows into that. And that is a 4-year degree, and that helps you kind of move up into the management side of the aviation industry that you want to. There's also flight. We have 400 plus flight students right now in our program, and we teach fixed wing and we teach rotor. And having that A&P, there is a lot of jobs out there, as you know, that require both. So to put you even more ahead of everybody else in the industry, having both, is a slam dunk for most employers. So having that A&P and coming to school and using your benefits as well to get your flight certificates, I think that's a great benefit.
That certainly sounds like it. Gosh, I appreciate all the assistance and information you provided, both of you. I think that just makes life that much easier for somebody who's looking at going to school and using the GI Bill. James, if we can have you bring your camera on back up, we'll get into some of the questions that have come in. We do have a couple of them. From Megan, and I think James, this is probably for you. Is there a group with similar function as the JSAM-TCC to help someone obtaining an FCC or NCATT certifications, as these are non-FAA certifications? And she's asking specifically about avionics.
Yeah, so that one I would actually have to do a little bit of research. I know the JSAMCC is established by the DoD specifically for the A&P programs. As far as the NCAT or the FCC, now the FCC requirement is still it's similar to the way the FAA is. It's right. You basically study, take the test, you get your general telephone operators certificate. And then you get your radar endorsement or whatever you want to, the different requirements that you can add onto that. As far as the military or the DoD establishing a STEP program with that yet, I don't believe one exists. I can reach out and see through my educational contacts and see what if there is. So that will definitely be a follow-up for her.
Okay, well, Megan, if you got James's email address, maybe drop him a quick note at the end. If not, James, if you send me the information, we'll make sure that she gets it.
Okay.
And James, I think this one might be for you as well. Stan is asking, is there an office for pilots who can get the Mil2Civ certification similar to the JSAM-TCC? Sorry, these acronyms are killing me right now. But basically, they're looking for something for pilots as opposed to the maintenance personnel.
Yes. So that's, man, I wish Stacy was on here because I know that's definitely her lane. The pilot aspect. So what is the pilots? They could get their ATP, they could get their commercial ratings, the different ratings that they could do with their flight experience. And again, and not to, I'm trying really not to defer these questions, but either I know Mark Stanley and Stacy would be able to answer that in two.
Yeah, this one's a bit outside the swim lane, so I figured I'd take a chance with it. But again, Stan, we can get the information to you for something like that. Do appreciate the question. honestly, those are all the questions we have. So I'm going to finish up with the one question we always try to ask everybody for each of you. And that would be, if there's one thing that you could that you would hope that a viewer would take away from this webinar today, what do you think that might be? And so I hate to jump right into somebody, but let's start with Jared. What would be the one thing you'd like somebody to take away from this webinar today?
Yeah, mechanics are needed, and not just mechanics, but educated mechanics. And if you got the chance and you have the resources to go to school to get that degree, whether it's in maintenance flight or just in general management, I highly suggest you do that. The workforce needs you, and every bit, well, every single veteran coming out, I would encourage to go into aviation, become a part of our community, and fill those gaps.
Okay, Jocelyn, how about for you? What do you think somebody should take away?
Not something we necessarily touched on, but just the fact that wherever you decide to go to school, there are a lot of people who are there and really invested in supporting you and helping you get through the program. If you haven't ever done school before, post-secondary school, if high school wasn't really your thing, might seem a little bit intimidating, but there are really great resources. I mean, I personally am just really happy to answer any questions that my students have when they are coming through the program. So just, you know, and you don't have to look at the whole thing, just maybe start little baby steps, just take it a step at a time, and you'll figure out the route that you need to take as you go.
Okay, we did have one question come in after I started asking about this, so I'll get to that in a second, but let's go ahead and finish the theme we're on. James, what's the one thing you would like people to take away from this?
So I think the biggest takeaway that I can contribute to this is, or that I would like somebody to take away from it is the ability that, you know, the industry is waiting and needs the people. And so it's not, you know, there is requirements as far as maintenance technicians and everything that they have to do to get in, but don't let that discourage you in any manner. You know, the industry is here with open arms. It needs help. I'm going to tell you from the hangar floor level. You know, it is one of those things that, you know, it will always be a need, and have the people with the right skills, the right talent, the right attributes, and get them on the floor with the right guidance is always a plus that will just help the industry overall. And so it's, you know, I would never want somebody to just look at their career, well, this is what I did in the military, but not really my thing. If you're passionate about aviation, stay with it, you know.
Absolutely, do appreciate that sentiment. The final question that came in was from a Giuseppe, and I think this is probably for Jared. And he's saying, as far as he knows, FAA A&P licenses are not able to be converted into EOSA equivalents. Do you know if there's a way to or a plan covering EOSA licensing, such as a B13 or a B2 through your school or some other place?
So right now, there is not like a cooperative consensual type thing between EOSA and the FAA. They don't really talk. But we've looked at the idea of doing both. Not really sure if that's possible. As of right now, there is no transition between the two, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we will keep our fingers crossed for that one as well. Jared, Jocelyn, James, can't tell you how much I appreciate that you joined us today. We know that people leaving the military, you don't know what's out there. And so having somebody who can come in and give advice, make things a little bit easier, shine a little bit more light on the process, just makes people a lot more comfortable. And so I'm grateful that you were able to share your time, experience, your knowledge with everybody today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and get things wrapped up here at the very end. Upcoming webinars, save the date. Next week, the final webinar for us for the year, Aviation Photography, How to Capture That Perfect Shot, Part 2. This one's going to focus a little bit more. We didn't get to all the questions that were brought up during the first aerial photography webinar. We want to get back to some of those. We also want to talk about things like money How do you price the photographs that you take? How do you sell them? What are the values? So there's some great information coming on that here next week, 4 p.m., just like we normally are. December 23rd, December 30th, the holiday season, we will not be holding webinars that week. Hope that you can enjoy time with family, friends, however you might want to celebrate. On January 6th, I kind of alluded to that a little while ago. We do have HAI Heli Expo coming up in March. That's going to be in Dallas, Texas this year, March 7th through the 10th. The show floor is going to be open the 8th through the 10th. There's a lot of stuff going on at Heli Expo this year. We didn't have one in New Orleans in 2021. We want to come back to Dallas. We know that our industry is excited and looking forward to being face-to-face again. There's a lot of things going on. So we thought, let's have a preview for you. And so we're going to discuss some of the different things that will be happening there, things you might want to look forward to. Again, this is the one show that everybody's attending. There's such cool things. If you really want to get excited about the industry, come to HAI Heli Expo. And in the meantime, see the preview next week. Okay. We will be sending out a questionnaire shortly. We do ask that you take just a few minutes and share your thoughts on the webinar. One of the questions we're going to ask is if there's any ideas that you can give us for upcoming webinars. We're always looking for new information. Actually, this webinar was one of the ones that was requested by somebody else, so we appreciate their interest. Also, as always, HAI was always looking to see what we can do to help you. We want to help the industry. We want to keep our rotors turning. If there's something that we can help you with, or if there's something we can do differently, something that we haven't been doing at all, something we're doing too much of, hey, let us know. The best way to do that is through an email to President James Viola. He was not able to join us today, but he does read these emails that come in, and he does assign them to the staff for tasking. So please let us know what we can do to help you out and keep your rotors turning, or your wrenches turning for that matter. That does conclude our webinar today. Until next week, we do ask that you be safe, that you fly safe, and we will see you again very, very soon. Thank you.